What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you the games that I am thankful for, as today is Thanksgiving here in the US, with the channel here finally about to hit 100,000 subscribers just after 7 years on the platform actually, which has enabled me to work from home and spend time with my young son before he starts school. It's pretty self-apparent that I have a lot to be thankful for, especially when we look at the hardships going on in a lot of the world. Thanksgiving has always been one of my favorite holidays, as I think it's important to count your blessings every once in a while. So, while there are obviously a great many things that I am thankful for that are much beyond the realm of video games, this is nonetheless a video game channel, so that's going to be the focus, of course. But as you might imagine, video games have been very much so involved in a great part of my life, and there are a few games that I'm, of course, thankful that they exist, but are also tied to bigger and more important experiences that went along with them that kind of shaped my perspective a little bit, and I thought I would share a few of those stories with you guys today. So with no further ado, let's get to it. First and foremost, Diablo 2. Diablo 2 is a great game on its own. I don't think I really need to ham that up for you, but the reason I'm thankful for it and the reason it is so important to me is that I grew up incredibly poor. I was actually homeless as a teenager at one point, and there was quite a long stretch of time where I was much more concerned about what I was going to eat next rather than the video games I was playing. But in spite of those things, in today's world, despite being poor, it is nonetheless easy to find yourself surrounded with technology at times. And when I was in middle school, which in the US is like 6th through 8th grade, depending on where you're at, it does actually vary a little bit by state, but more specifically like 7th, 8th grade. And my biological family at the time was very much so struggling, but there was this old busted computer that we had, and it would play Diablo 2, which is where I really started picking it up and playing it for the first time. And I enjoyed it so much, and also the lack of other games to play really, that I played Diablo 2 probably more than I've played any other game. In the incredibly rare instances we had internet, I would play on the ladder. But even when that wasn't available, you could of course just play it on a single player offline mode. And at that age and at that time, when I had really no control over this kind of awful situation, what I could do was play Diablo 2 and just focus my attention somewhere else, which at the time really helped me get through a rough spot in my life. I've talked about this a little bit previously as well, but because of that period in my life where I would basically just, be around all this stuff because I'm in the US and would go to school and things like that, where I would see families and kids getting to do all this stuff that was just never a possibility for me, at least at that point, obviously, is kind of the catalyst for what drove me to video games, because they were just so out of reach and I wanted to be involved with them. So I played very little games from like the 2000s, but nonetheless, Diablo was one of them and probably the one I played the most. There were a few others. Every once in a while I would get to play WoW, but given the subscription service, that was obviously very intermittent. But Diablo 2 was so important to me, in fact, that to this day, I have both the original version installed on this PC that I'm recording on right now, as well as the recent Diablo 2 Resurrected. And not only do I have them installed, I still play it regularly. Every once in a while, when I just want to spend like 20-30 minutes doing something just to like chill out a little bit, I will fire this up and play it, which because of all that history has turned Diablo 2 into something of a comfort game for me. But that brings us to our second entry on the title, and it is Final Fantasy XII. This one is important to me, and I'm thankful for it because it is one of the few games I've gotten to truly play with my adopted father. Obviously, when you're in a bad life situation and you wind up homeless, things aren't exactly going well. But when I was in 7th and 8th grade, I met the people who would eventually become my adoptive parents. And in fact, I stayed with them for a little while before ultimately having to go back to my biological family for a few years. But during that time period, and again, actually, once I had been formally adopted as well, myself and my adopted dad, which I will honestly just call Dad throughout the rest of this video, would play Final Fantasy XII. They actually had a console and stuff where they had, 3 other boys, my brothers. And again, never really got to play that stuff, so I was immediately drawn to it. And I was really interested in Final Fantasy XII, which they owned, of course. and my dad picked up on that and, wanting to make a connection, would hang out and play it with me. For the most part, I would run around and do like all the combat stuff, but when it was time to advance the story, we'd sit down, play through it, watch all of it together, talk about it, and we bonded a lot over it actually. While that was a really good experience for me at that age, it means a lot more to me now that I'm older and can properly understand that while my dad doesn't play a ton of games, he is a bit of a gamer, honestly. He'll play stuff like Minecraft of all things, and then stuff like Farming Simulator. But while I think my dad enjoyed Final Fantasy XII, it's become pretty obvious he was playing it for me. And while I enjoy Final Fantasy XII and its characters, and honestly just a lot of the mechanics, I think the Gambit system is really cool, and you see variations of it in games to this day. That game means a lot more to me because of that experience with my dad. And honestly, I hope that regardless of what interests my son winds up having, he's pretty young right now, hasn't started school yet, but whether it be video games or anything else really, I hope I can share a similar experience with him. But that brings us to our last entry for this video, and it is Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous, which if you watch the channel a lot really shouldn't be much of a surprise, but I'm thankful for Wrath of the Righteous in the sense that it was what finally kind of got the channel moving really. I had started to pick up a little bit of steam as everything had shut down for the pandemic and everything, as people were playing more games, but then when Wrath of the Righteous hit beta and I started covering it, those videos started blowing up, so I covered it more, and by the time that game released, I was making enough to just step into doing this full time. And as I said at the start of the video, now the channel is close to 100,000 subscribers, just a couple of days from now, I imagine, which is incredible. And while I certainly like to think that if it hadn't been Wrath of the Righteous, it would have been something else, nonetheless, Wrath of the Righteous is a fantastic game, and I covered it so much because I'm a big fan of that game, the systems at play, CRPGs in general really, but Wrath of the Righteous is my favorite game. And I'm glad that covering something I enjoy has led me to so many opportunities, which is honestly why I'm making this video now. So, those are a handful of the games I'm thankful for, some of the reasons I'm thankful for them. I truly hope you enjoyed the video. I'd love to hear down below about the games you are thankful for, or just anything you're thankful for really, or any games that are important to you. But above all, truly, just thank you so much for watching, allowing me to do this for a living. It means the world to me. Happy Thanksgiving. May you wander in wisdom, and have an amazing day.